Hey everybody, welcome to the Catch Up After College podcast, season 3, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. I just noticed that I used your mantra or what you've been using for your podcast, but we're going to keep moving. You know, I guess
we're good.
Yeah, great minds think alike, but that's just the season theme, so you know you get to keep it overall. So yeah, 10 episodes.
There we go.
But wow, that's the intro. Let's try that again. We are a safe space grounded in grace, and our aim is always to aid. We may be post-graduation, but we're never post-education. I'm Isaiah Brown, your host. Thank you for tuning in today. And today we have the amazing Anugreh Sapra here with us. What's happening?
Not much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're in Canada right now. That's pretty awesome.
Yep, just moved here must be a month and a half by now. So just moved a month and a half ago to here, and yeah, it's awesome so far. Loving it.
Yeah.
It's like same but different.
Okay. How many countries have you lived in? Like 4?
I was born in India, lived there till I was 4, and then I moved to Bahrain, which is right off the coast of Saudi Arabia next to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And then when I was 18, moved to Sydney. That's where I did Hillsong College. First year worship, did my bachelor's in theology there. Then I interned with Brendan, kind of went back and did third year and interned with Brendan over there. And then, when he moved to San Francisco, I pretty much moved around the same time. So I spent 3 years in San Francisco, and now I've moved here.
Nice, man.
However many countries that is.
Yeah. And shout out Brendan for the audience who don't know, season 2, episode 11. Check him out. But I hear that you're a podcast host, as we're kind of talking about earlier.
I just started a new podcast maybe about 2 months ago. I think you've been going for much longer than I have. It's called the Stepping Out series, and very similar to what you just said before. Essentially, my hope is that it would give people courage to step out into their calling, into the giftings, vision, talent, and just getting to hear from the stories from normal people who have stepped out into what they believe their vision is, and kind of what those first steps were like, what insecurities they might have to deal with, what personal issues they have to deal with, and whatnot. And the hope is that someone would be inspired on the other half of that.
Nice. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love that. And didn't your fiance just start a podcast too?
She has. She's yet to put out the first episode, but I'm sure it'll be coming out soon.
Nice.
It's called Coffee with a Purpose.
Hey, shout out. Cool. So I thought I'd ask you, do you mind sharing a couple tips and any favorite moments you have from interviewing guests? Because I know you're a great interviewer.
I think one of my favorite moments that happened so far is from a lady named Wendy. She's part of our Hillsong South Africa team, and she's the internship pastor over there. And she was talking about, she born in South Africa. She moved to America for a while, and then she moved back because she felt a call back to South Africa, and it was a huge move for her. And but during that move, like, finances weren't extremely stable, and she was talking about how multiple times she came to like the end of her limits. Like, she said, legitimately, I came to the last can of food in our shelf. Wow. And someone just showed up and was just like, hey, I just felt like God put on my heart to like buy you groceries, and they had no idea what was going on in their life. And another one, she said as well, like, they prepay. It's kind of like if you prepay for your phone, like, and how many gigs you'll have. It's a very similar concept, I believe, in South Africa for the electricity. And they were down to like the last limit, and they knew that the electricity was going to go off, but for some reason, like, it just stayed still and did not move for like 3 days until her husband got paid. And just small moments of how God just showed up, and just showed up in such a beautiful way, and kind of just gave that sense of, I'm with you, like, keep going, I've called you to this. So that's been one of my favorite moments so far. It was stunning.
Dang, that's awesome, man. Cool. Hey, you mind telling us where you're from and can you describe what your life was like before college?
Yeah, so like I said before, I was born in New Delhi, India. When I was 4, I left and moved to Bahrain. So didn't know any English when I moved there, and there were some Indian speaking schools, but that was the first time I started learning English in Bahrain. And Bahrain's a very interesting place because actually 40% of the population are all expats or kind of like immigrants
Mhm.
almost. So I just grew up going to like an international school from the moment I like stepped into Bahrain. So I learned English from like British teachers. So my accent was like super British, and just grew up around like a whole bunch of people from all over the world, and yeah, it was amazing. Like it was interesting living outside of your own country. So it's kind of that. I don't know if you've heard the term third culture kid. Um, there's quite a
Explain it.
bit of yeah, third culture kid are like people who were born in a certain area but grew up in another area. So it's almost that sense of where I'm too Indian to be Bahraini, but too Bahraini to be Indian, you know, like that kind of,
Mhm.
and you're kind of wrestling with having heritage values inside of you and then experiencing values from the country you grew up in. But then I feel like in Bahrain, there was an extra dynamic of I was then also there with people from all over the world. So I was kind of getting like British values and Scottish values and Australian values and Malaysian, all those kind of different values growing up. So it's always kind of this, yeah, it was actually really interesting trying to like figure out um, like what values you hold. And it kind of was good in a lot of ways because you know, it doesn't make you so patriotic towards your own country's values. It allows you to kind of explore and see what were the good parts about India, what were the bad parts, what are the good parts about Bahrain, what are the good parts about, yeah, wherever you live. And kind of just being able to adopt wherever you stay in.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you had like an identity crisis? You didn't know who you were in a sense?
Um, Not really, which is super interesting. Um, and I say that because I hear other people who have felt that way a lot. Um, if you talk to a lot of my friends from Bahrain, they're quite chill. It's because all of us were on the same boat. Like we were just all international people growing up in a country that's not our own, but still adopting its value and having Bahraini friends as well. And um, but no, I never felt like. I mean, I guess at times it sometimes I'm just when I think I notice it the most when I actually do get to talk to like I got to meet up with a bunch of school friends over here, and there's just a different level of understanding, where it's just like oh yeah, you have Indian parents as well, I have Indian parents, but we're growing up outside of India and kind of navigating the Western world with Eastern values at the same time, but never felt like it was like a huge crisis or never felt like it was something that hindered me. In fact, I felt like it's helped me be able to relate to a lot more people. I feel like I can kind of relate to almost every nationality quite easily and not feel kind of too withdrawn from them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's awesome. And
Mm,
growing up, how did you know that college was going to be the right path for you personally?
I didn't. And and by college, you're talking specifically Hillsong College, right?
Basically, college in general.
Right. I mean, as an Asian, that's like that's just like it's part of the picture. It's never not part of the
Mm,
picture.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's just we've been talking about like higher education since I was 16, 15. It's just always been part of the picture. So um, it's I would say out of my whole graduating class, probably only about 3 people didn't go to college,
Mhm.
but majority went to college. It was just always kind of just a part of it. But I had a little bit of a different way around, um, meaning when I chose to go to Hillsong College, I actually wanted to do my bachelor's in psychology, but I decided to do a gap year in Sydney and just do 1 year, show up at Hillsong College. And straight after that, go and do my bachelor's in psychology. But then I felt a call to ministry in that time. and just decided to go from a bachelor's in theology in Australia itself. But yeah, I've kind of been going since then, and I haven't stopped. I'm currently doing my master's. That's what I was doing in San Francisco, continuing it online right now.
Nice.
And yeah, I've been studying for the last 8 years. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. How was that season in Sydney for you? You're there for how many years?
4.5.
Okay, that's a decent amount. Was there culture shock, or how did you feel moving out there?
Um, I mean, like I said, I actually it took me about 3 years to feel homesick,
Mm,
which is super odd.
yeah.
Just hearing everyone else's experience around the same time as well. It didn't feel like a culture shock in a lot of ways, just because like I had some Australian friends in Bahrain as well. And then also I was going into an international community. I actually think if I went into a community that was purely Australian, I think I would have probably felt more of a culture shock there.
Mm,
Like I actually find it weird, even when I go back to India and only see Indians, it's kind of a weird experience for me. I'm pretty used to just a whole diversity of people, and that's what I kind of enjoy. Um, I didn't feel a culture shock that way. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Like Australians show you love by like ripping into one another, and we
yeah.
did that our whole life, like just growing up. So it's like pretty used to it, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Um, but you get to learn about other cultures. Other cultures don't enjoy being ripped into as much,
Yeah.
and
True. Very true.
and but yeah, it was good. I love being in Sydney. Yeah, I can't complain.
Nice. Cool. And can you recall a season, I'm guessing during college, where you had to learn new skills or adapt to your environment to survive?
Um, yeah, I think especially probably just in the more recent season, being in San Francisco and doing my master's. Um, I think it was easier for me when I was like 18 and 19, 20, not as much going on. But when I moved to America, of course, being part of helping build our local Hillsong campus in San Francisco and being heavily involved in that, um, being in a relationship and kind of having other interests as well. So then it was just almost like a lot of stuff going on at the same time. And I think the big thing that I've learned in the recent season is working through perfectionism and, just I've been going with this saying, which is just like done is better than perfect, and kind of like
That's
living
good.
according to that. And sometimes you just got to get stuff done. It can't always just be ideal. Like, yeah, I've been very guilty of just spending time like obsessing over like papers I have to put in, um, which is good, but it can almost be demotivating because you put it off because you put so much pressure on yourself to make it so good. Um, but then also like what I realized the times where I have just kind of handed it in, it's maybe I had a bit of a percentage loss in my grade, but it was minimal. It was like 5%. And I'm like, oh, I can live with that, so
Yeah.
we'll be fine. It will be fine, but it allows me, it frees me up to do so many other things. And I save multiple hours on that 5%. And I am definitely still navigating through what does it look like, thinking about making sure that it's done, but also making sure that you put your best work out there. I don't know yet.
Hmm.
But that's kind of just what's helping me right now, and it's helping me manage multiple things that I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah. Do you feel like
Yeah.
deadlines really help in that whole area you're talking about? Like you can't work on something for a
No,
year or something?
I don't know. I don't have any thoughts around that yet. I think it's good. It should be, but like deadlines also. Yeah, I sometimes I just like doing it according to kind of like when I want to do it. Yeah, like for example, when I finished my bachelor's, it was such an interesting experience that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to study. Like I'm done. Like I'm good now. And it only took me about 2 3 weeks to start like reading something again or getting interested in something. But it's kind of like I don't know. I think it's like a rebellious nature inside of us where it's like if you're being told to do it, you don't want to do it. But
Yeah.
if no one's telling you to do it, then you'll do it.
Hmm.
So I don't know how to navigate through that because it's funny because when someone tells you to write a paper, I'm just like, I don't want to write a paper. Like it just feels like, I don't know. I'm still working. I don't know. Like we're working through how to perceive assessments and papers and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of got told by my parents to go to college, and I didn't want to. So I know what you mean in the whole rebellious thing. And then, funny enough, someone told me about Hillsong College, the college we both went to, and I guess they presented it in a more friendlier way. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that instead, and this time I'll actually try. So it's weird how that whole balance of being told to do something versus wanting to do something. It's very strange.
Mm, absolutely. And it's like, I think it's always one thing that has helped me, even when I try writing some of my papers, like right at the top, I just try writing why. Why is this paper important? And why is it worth diving into? And just keeping the why in front of you, I think really helps. And also I found for myself not stretching it out too long, just kind of research, write it, just get it done within like 2-3 days. I think when you really stretch it out to a couple of weeks, I just get bored by then. And like,
Yeah.
I think like my brain can't make the attachments as well once you really stretch it out over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I ask your homework habits? Like, do you have a certain way you get stuff done?
Bro, I'm trying to figure that out. One of the biggest things that has definitely helped me is especially now with online school, I pretty much listen to I can't sit still and listen to the lectures. It drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me what's really helped is involving my education into part of my life rather than sitting down on a table. So if I'm going for a walk to go and meet somewhere, if I'm going to go and exercise, I just kind of like throw on the lectures and listen to it. Or I even like last week, I pretty much was like, well, I got to clean the house. Might as well listen to my lectures and like smash both of them out at the same time. And I feel that when I'm doing stuff, my mind feels much more alert. I'm happy to go for like a 1.5 hour walk just to listen to a lecture, and it doesn't really bother me. And then I think the other big thing that's really helped me recently is, I don't know, I think while typing, I get a little bit, you can't say tongue tied because you're typing, but like,
Yeah.
but I find it hard to express myself through writing a lot of times. So I've been using the dictation feature a lot with my papers. And so I pretty much turn on dictation and I just start talking to the computer and it just writes everything down, and you pretty much finish like 4 pages within 20 minutes. And then I just go back and edit it. And then I kind of fill it out. Like I can get, that's what I did for our last couple of papers. Just did that 20 minutes. And then I spend probably then another 2 days just kind of getting good research information there, kind of like fleshing it out. And I'll probably go from like 4 pages to like 6-7 pages, however much is required from there. And fixing the grammar, obviously it doesn't do it perfectly, but like most of the heavy lifting is done at that point. And I feel like it makes it makes it a better read and like an easier flow of thought. So I think that's been my biggest help, because like I said, with perfectionism, I'm like trying to like make sure my introduction sounds awesome, and you waste so much time on that,
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And so what has been the biggest roadblock or hurdle you've had to face since, I guess, graduating that first phase of college, like your bachelor's, like you're saying?
What's been
It's kind of hard to ask because I know you're in college still. So
no, I'm still in my master's. I'm still trying to, but I've just switched over to part-time. I did it last term and this term, so it's been interesting. What has been the hardest phase of it?
The biggest roadblock or hurdle you've had to face?
I think it's learning to, I think it's still making sure you make time for like friendships and relationships in the midst of that, because that's super hard. Because when you mix a full-time work schedule with, sorry, a full-time study schedule with high involvement in volunteering, and then me taking on own personal projects out of
Yeah.
nowhere, no one's asking me to. But mixing all of that and still prioritizing relationships, I think that's definitely a hard part, because you can definitely end up spending so much time on work. And I don't know. I just feel like a huge part of me right now is kind of working to reprioritize stuff to make sure that I am spending more time chatting to my family, to my fiance, to friends, and really prioritizing that, putting that first, um, and just learning. And I really do think it comes back to like growing up with Eastern values, where like studying and like succeeding when it comes to your academics is just like, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. Um, and trying to like rewire your brain, um, that like for example in Bangalore, which is kind of would be pretty equivalent to the Bay Area of the United States. It's kind of like the tech capital. It has some of the best universities, but among students, it has the highest suicide rates in the world. So these are the brightest students in the world, and there's some the brightest students in India, but yet like the suicide rate is so high, and it's because academics is almost like it becomes the results end up becoming part of like um, the value you put on yourself or your self-worth. And that's, bro, that's been a huge process for me in the last 8 years, like learning to dissect like my self-worth from my academics and my achievements and successes, um, and realizing that my value doesn't come from those things, and just making sure that we put academics in its appropriate place. It's helpful, it's good, but to then make sure that your value comes from it is a very dangerous place. um,
Yeah. No, that's great. How do you personally make sure that you make time for friends while, keeping your studies a priority?
um, I think for me, what I've done so far is when I know that I don't have as much social activity going on, I kind of just double down on my work, as if like it's, I don't know the best way to say it, but it's like saving up for a rainy day, where maybe then like right now, like on this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm going away for camping. So I'm just like, oh crap, well, I should probably like study and make sure that I
Yeah.
get all my work done before I go away. And I also think one thing that's helped me is also setting social events to go to, because what that allows me to do is kind of like you have like a hard deadline to work towards. Um, and yeah, I think one big change that I've made recently is I was reading The Let Go Life by Joseph Prince, and he was talking about the importance of Sabbath. And bro, I think for the last 3 years, like I was not consistent in taking a day off. I just wasn't. Um, and like even if I would take a day off, it's kind of like I didn't like set it in my mind, okay, I'm not going to do any work today. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, if I find a gap, I might just go ahead and do something. But just pretty much since moving here, just making sure I set aside like 2 days now, and making sure like Saturday and Sunday, just planning on doing nothing and just doing whatever kind of like I want to do, and spend time with friends, enjoy it. And it's actually worked out really well, because it's when you know that on Friday, when Friday 6 p.m. I'm going to clock out, especially, I'm managing my own time, then it's kind of like you can't say, oh, it's fine if I just don't do work in the morning, because if Friday's the deadline, then you just have to get stuff done.
Yeah.
You can't do it on Saturday, and so it's kind of creating those hard boundaries I found has really helped.
Yeah. Do you feel like COVID in a way has slowed you down or forced you to slow down a bit, especially in this season?
Nah, I think it's actually become harder.
Really?
Um, I feel like it's become harder for me, because it's yeah, because otherwise certain social events or certain commitments it would force me to kind of be forced to be there, and forced to, yeah, it's kind of like if I don't have those commitments in place that I have to attend to, then it's kind of like there's nothing to work up to. So then I could start like working up until 8 o'clock at night. And it's not just all work, it's also like, yeah, like the personal projects, like the podcast, and like getting my YouTube channel going and getting my coaching business up and whatnot. It's even after I finish all the like the college commitments and volunteering commitments, like you can keep going. But when I had like a bigger schedule, I just found it easier to kind of prioritize. So it actually was a little bit easier before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Not what I was expecting, but yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny because, you know, other people have had like, I've heard both sides of the coin, because some people have said like they found it much, much harder to balance work, have a work-life balance, because you can easily, like, if you're working from your bedroom, right? It's just like, you can just keep going on and on, but it's like having that, okay, I'm in class now, and then I'm going to be in this place now. Having those like physical shifts really helps.
Yeah, that's cool. And this may seem a bit of a weird question because I know you're studying about, you know, God basically, but while studying your major, in what ways did it challenge your faith and vice versa?
So for this whole year, I've been studying the history of Christianity, pretty much all the way from Jesus all the way up until now. So we've covered 2,000 years, and just seeing the progression of Christianity is so interesting, and how we ended up where we are today. And what's really, 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 really challenged me is the huge danger of letting culture define your faith, and letting culture define your reading of scripture, and letting your culture define the church, rather than allowing scripture to define the church, to define the culture. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And even with politics, like when it was like Henry VIII and like all those guys in the British Empire, like those guys were just using Christianity as a political tool, and so many church and ministry leaders did exactly the same thing. And I've just been so challenged to question my own culture and my own cultural beliefs and how I read them into the text. And bro, even like when you're reading a lot of like leadership books and like books about finance and stuff like that, and the danger is, before you even know it, sometimes you can even read those stuff into scripture and even make those seem like godly wisdom and a godly worldview. But I'm really trying to work backwards and make sure, like, okay, what does the Bible have to say about money? What does the Bible have to say about a relationship? What does the Bible have to say about culture and politics and life and all those kind of stuff, rather than doing it the other way around? And it's not that non-Christian authors aren't valuable, but you still have to read it with quite a critical mind, because there definitely are times where they can say stuff where it's just not the right way around. It's just it's just not a Christian worldview, and you can start. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
No,
it's like
it does.
it's a dangerous thing, man, because it's really messed up the church in the past, because culture became part of Christianity. Like I even learned about like capitalism and Christianity and how they kind of went hand in hand together, and how like, so I think exposing yourself to the history of Christianity, that not everyone believed what you believed right now, is really interesting. And you'd be very prideful to call yourself more faithful than other people, you know? Like they lived so differently, but yet they were still faithful believers. They were still honest people. They just lived their life differently. I'm asking myself the question right now. It's 2020. Okay, in 50 years or in 100 years, what are the history of Christianity books going to be saying about us? Like, what are our blind spots right now? And really working to remove those. So that's been challenging. but it's been good. I've really been enjoying kind of stepping back and just being critical of my faith in a good way, and embracing like our spiritual ancestry.
Yeah, awesome. And got some extraordinary questions for you because that's the theme of this season. But who would you say have been some extraordinary influencers in your life personally?
Extraordinary influencers. Obviously, I would definitely have to say from our senior pastor from our church, Pastor Brian, has been a huge influence on me. Just the way he leads. I've always had like this kind of like, if I could lead like Brian and speak like Ravi Zacharias, I would be a very happy man. Like that's just my goal in life, to be able to do that, lead like Brian and speak like Ravi. Pastor Brian has an incredible way of leading people in such a nurturing, and just you see the way that he's just led through his whole life with such a light spirit, so much energy, not being weighed down, still being so passionate and full of faith for the future. The way he's so committed to seeing other people live out their God calling in their life. And then I would have to say for Ravi, like Ravi Zacharias, he just passed away recently. Phenomenal person, phenomenal. The way he articulates. Have you read any of his stuff before?
I got to hear him speak a couple times, but I haven't read anything yet.
Yeah. I used to binge his stuff like there's no tomorrow. Like, and if like anyone's listening and you have any hard questions about Christianity, you pretty much just need to type in that question, type in Ravi, and you'll find an answer for it. And I used to legitimately sit down, listen to his YouTube videos, and just like write down like the whole answer on paper, just because that's when I felt like it came alive to me. But he was the one who taught me how logical faith can be, that it is a logical pursuit. It's you don't have to like throw your intellect out of the window to be a Christian. He's helped me through that a lot, and more than that, for such a brilliant man as he is, like a lot of people, he goes to a lot of universities like Yale, Harvard, Oxford, huge universities, and he does Q&As. But you just see the way he answers questions. People hit him with like the toughest questions out there, like why is there pain in the world? Like why did God take away my parents in a car crash when I was younger? And say that point blank to his face. And you just see, he always says that there's always like a question behind the questioner, and you've got to find what that question is. And oftentimes when people ask you about faith, he's taught me that there's often a deeper pastoral question that they're really asking. Like, are they really concerned about the sovereignty of God and evil? Or is there something more that happened, like something that happened to their parents? And you just see the way he answers a question in such a kind, nurturing manner. And he approaches it from so many different points of view. He uses stories, he uses logic, he uses facts. And hugely inspirational person for me. And just the way he communicates, it's like, I've never seen anyone be so selective about the words he uses, because he wants to make sure that each word matters. It's like a sushi chef, like such like precise cuts in his words.
Nice. And how do you personally not settle for the status quo, but instead to strive for excellence in all spheres of life?
I think a big part is vision. Vision, like what I believe that I've been called to do with my life. That is, it's like this huge anchor for me. And it may not be in like day to day, it may not feel like an anchor, but it's like over like the months and years, like it's constantly like moving me towards that direction. And with that, it's kind of like, I know I need to prepare myself for that. I know I need to keep on preparing, and I know that all the opportunities before me I don't see them as just like happenstance. I see them as like God moments. I see them like seeing the extraordinary in every single day. Um, and I'm not going to pretend like every single day is like super, super extraordinary and every single day is awesome. But it's kind of like always getting back up because you see what the vision is. And I feel like what else makes me strive? I think it's also, just our teaching that we got at Hillsong College. Like it was always focused on growth. And I don't know, it's just kind of like it's been branded into my mind. I can't help myself now. I'm just always trying to like do stuff that would make me want to grow. Like I feel pretty crap about myself if I'm not moving forward in some way. But yeah, I would say, I don't know how helpful that would be for someone listening, but it's kind of, it's kind of like, it's just the best way to live. Like why would you want to settle for days? I mean, days are fine, but like weeks and months of not moving forward when there's just so much like life is so awesome. Like there's so much you can like do in your lifetime and just soak up every single moment. Like why wouldn't you want to just keep on like pushing yourself and trying new things? And and like I think especially it's like when you surround yourself with great people, and it doesn't have to be in person, which in person is definitely awesome, but even when you listen to people like Ravi, you listen to people like Pastor Ryan, even the people I get to interview in my podcast, you just kind of see them setting the benchmark and you're like, whoa, life could be like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it just constantly fuels you forward. That's kind of me.
Awesome. And I feel like you kind of answered this question in a little bit so far, but what are different ways that you or others challenge yourself for consistent improvement, for not only for what you do, but for who you are?
Not just what I do, but who I am. For me in this season, it's been reading the right books, books that focus on your character and challenge you to deal with stuff, and challenge you to just getting the right type of like books into your life where like if it's like, for example, if it's any of like Brene Brown stuff, like if it's with like vulnerability or stuff like that, just working with your inner self. And I feel like when you do that, you really work on who you are rather than how to win friends and influence people, which is awesome and it's a useful tool, but it's not really working on you as a person necessarily. And I think every time I spend time in those books, it challenges me to live different, and then it just affects my entire world. And it's
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to make sure to get your book recommendations by the end of this podcast. But you mind telling us what's the biggest surprise of adulthood so far?
Oh man, what's the biggest surprise of adulthood? I don't know if it's the biggest surprise. Yeah, I think the biggest surprise and the biggest lesson I've learned from adulthood is at the end of the day, you need to make your own decisions because you're the one who's going to have to live with them. I think that's been the big one for me. Whether it's come to career, it's come to relationships. Definitely, I think get godly advice, get the right people around you, hear from the right people. But at the end of the day, for example, if it's a relationship and you think it's not right, but other people might think it is, at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to have to marry that person and live with them, not that person. You're going to have to live with the choices you make, the big ones, not the other people. So at the end of the day, you need to own your own decisions.
Yeah.
And that's part of being a man, and it's part of like stepping up in life and becoming an adult, like owning your own personal decisions and what you're going to do.
Yeah, stepping out.
That was the biggest surprise. Yep. Just did my own plug.
Awesome, man. So 2020, it has been a crazy year. How has it affected you personally? And like, what are the first couple of things that come to mind for you that you've learned or experienced?
I mean, 2020 moved countries, so that's one. I got engaged in 2020.
Hey.
Moved countries. It was a big year for me. Uh, yeah, I think it was a good moment where I kind of not got to reprioritize, but I don't know, maybe like God just was like, it was just a perfect moment where God just gave me the nudge that I needed to make the choices I needed to make. What was the second half of your question?
Like, what are the first couple of things that come to mind for you personally when you think of 2020?
Yeah, I just think I learned so much about life, about leadership, about the nature of people, and it's been good. It's been good. One of my friends said to me years ago when I had visa issues in like 2016 or 17 and didn't know if I could go back to Sydney. And she said to me, when you can't go further, go deeper. And that's just what I've been focused on. And just being faithful with what's right in front of you. And it's been a fruitful season. And I feel like God's been doing awesome stuff within my own life. And I've loved it. Like, COVID's looked different. It's made the world look different, but it's helped address stuff inside of me. And it's taught me to lead at such a different capacity. I've gotten to like lead couple teams here and there, getting to lead couple people, and just learning like what it looks like to lead well in this season is very, very interesting. And it takes out all your routine and it gets to the core of who you are. 2020 has been interesting.
Yeah.
But not a wasted year. Not a wasted year. Definitely not.
That's great. And speaking on leadership, can you give one tip to being a great leader? And I guess two-parter, what's the difference between managing and leading people?
My number one tip to being a good leader. I think always be leading yourself. Like we've been speaking before, you've got to keep on growing yourself. And sometimes it's less of what you do and what you say to your team and more of who you are. If you're constantly leading the way in the way you kind of live and the way that you take risks, kind of like similar stuff with the podcasting, and just like, I'm sure you would have known for yourself the first time you released a podcast, it's kind of like all these kind of like feelings bubble to the surface, and you're just like, is this a crap idea? Like what are people going to think about this and whatnot? But it's almost that I think leaders are the one who take the first step out there. And it's kind of like, well, if Isaiah can do it, I can do it. And now if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it's kind of just living your life in a way where you're constantly kind of pushing yourself and getting out of your own comfort zone and continually stepping up, because that itself is inspirational for people. I think I spoke to someone recently on my podcast, and she's an awesome person. Like, she steps out like no one else I know. And I'm like, it's not normal, right? And she's just like, really? And I'm like, I really feel that in California, and especially the community you and I get to be around, we're in a very, very blessed community where this consistently, the United States has this entrepreneurial spirit in the air to it, where it's like everyone's wanting to grow, everyone's trying to be better, but it is so uncommon for the rest of the world. Very uncommon. So when I get to talk to my friends from Bahrain, or I get to talk to some people from India, there's just no one in their circle who's kind of living like this. And so it's kind of like, it's important that you step out. You've got to, like, the way you lead is going to be different, and the people you get to impact is going to be so different from the people I get to impact. So yeah, it really does matter when you step out, like, because it really gives courage to other people to also step out into their vision and their calling. So yeah, I think number one tip for leadership is just, man, you got to be committed to leading your own life to keep on growing. It doesn't need to look super glamorous and super awesome, and kind of in that, I mean, like, like if you watch any of Gary Vaynerchuk's stuff, like, that guy's a freaking beast, like, going every single day. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to look like that. I think if you're just pushing yourself in a way that's authentic to you, I really believe people get inspired by that. And I mean, John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing but influence. And you got to ask yourself, are you influencing people for the better or for the worst? And yeah, that's what I would say, leadership. And what was your second part of the question?
What's the difference between managing and leading people?
Yeah, difference between managing and leading people is definitely leading by example. I really do think that's the title difference between leading and managing people. And yeah, I'm definitely not perfect at it. I definitely have a long way to go. Long way to go when it comes to like growing in my leadership. But yeah, you need to. And also, I think the other thing is like also caring about the person genuinely and dearly, and wanting the best for them. And I think that's a huge difference between leadership and managing. Managing is just trying to get the most output out of someone, whereas leadership is like caring about the person. I don't know if you ever heard, I think it's in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's about the goose that produces the golden eggs.
No.
Have you ever heard that before?
Mm-mm.
It makes no sense when I say it like that. But this farmer found out that this one goose was producing all like these golden eggs, and he just kept going back every day, and then he kept on finding golden eggs, and he was like, oh, that's amazing. And he just kept on going back and going back. He kept on producing it, and then one day he got greedy, and he's just like, I want more golden eggs. So he just went to the goose itself and cut up the goose and try to open it up from the inside and to see if there's more. And obviously it turned out that it was the goose itself that was producing the egg. And the whole moral of that story is, when you're so focused on the output of trying to get more golden eggs out of people, and you don't actually take care of the person, which is the goose in this metaphor, it's almost like going after the output is what managers do. Going after the person is what leaders do. And if you can really nurture, if you can really look after someone, believe in someone, give them the opportunities, speak life into them, the golden eggs are going to come out by themselves. But if you go after the golden eggs, you're going to kill the person in the process.
Yeah, it's deep. I never heard that, but yeah, now I know. Let's see. Life expectations before and after college, how they changed anyway?
Man, I was a hugely different person before college. Oh man. Yeah, 6 months into college. Of course, the college we went to, Hillsong College, is a Christian-based leadership college. So it's probably very different to the typical college, but I couldn't recognize myself within 1 month of being there, less 6 months. Yeah, before college, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Within just 6 months, I felt the general direction, and within like 4 years, I felt pretty good about like a direction that I'm going towards. But yeah, I think I definitely saw myself prior to college thinking, the classic thing, like go to college, get a job, get married, settle down. Now it's kind of like I hesitate to say a lot of those things because, I have my plan, God has his.
Yeah.
I don't even say things anymore. I was just talking to Holly recently, and I'm just like, I wonder how long we'll be in Canada. And I just don't know. And it's just like, I hesitate to say anything because, you just don't know where God might end up calling you, and just being okay with that, and not feeling like you need to have all of your life planned out. And I think one thing I've taken out of my vocabulary from before and after college is the idea of settling down. I hate that word. I hate that word so much. Like I have no intention of settling down. I don't even know what that means. That just feels like giving up.
No, it's real. For real.
Yeah.
Big moment right here. What books, podcasts, music, or learning resources are you consuming right now?
Right now, I'm more of an audio book kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm listening to another guy from Ravi Zacharias' team. His name is Nabil Qureshi. This isn't leadership book. Were you hoping for leadership books or just in general?
Yeah, anything.
Okay. I'm listening to Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. That's about a Muslim's search for God and him finding Jesus along the way. Super, super interesting. Listening to that. Reading as well Undaunted by Christine Kane. Sorry, I don't know if it's Undaunted. It's one of the or Unashamed. I don't know. One of the
Something. Yeah.
It's Unashamed. I have the book right here. Yeah, Unashamed.
Oh, nice.
If you could see it. Been reading that, and that's got to do with a lot of working through shame and guilt, and traces of that in every person's life. So those books have been super awesome. And then, of course, all my books that I have to read from my masters. Like, I got this. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge reader, by the way. Like, I love learning, but I don't like reading. I read because I have to learn. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, dude, speed reading has been the biggest game changer for me. Mm-hmm. It's helped me so much. But yeah, this is my theology book that I have to work through.
My goodness. It's bulletproof.
Yeah. I am about 90 pages out of 1,000 pages in. Jesus.
Wow. Man.
But yeah, learning to speed read has been such a huge thing. Like, mm-hmm. deciding what you're going to read slow, deciding what you're going to read fast.
Yeah.
It's been a huge game changer for me. Oh. So yeah, I was definitely reading a lot more leadership books before this. I don't know, just did like a switch recently. I've been reading a little bit more faith-based books over the last 2 months. And then podcasts. I've stopped podcasts recently, just again because I spend time listening to audiobooks and lectures instead. But mm-hmm. the podcasts I do listen to are the Gallup Strengths one, just to keep myself up to date and learning about it. Yeah, that's where I get to learn about strengths-based leadership and strengths-based coaching. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I could say about it. It's super, super interesting. Nice. Books, and yeah, those will probably be the two big things.
Awesome. And last question for you. Let's see.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you could ask your future self, what would it be? And if there's one thing you could tell your high school self, what would it be?
Oh, those are good questions.
Gracias.
One question I could ask my future self.
Mm-hmm. And then tell your high school self.
How in the future are we talking?
We could say as old as you want, like 60, 40, whatever works for you, 80. I guess
let's 60. Go 100. I'll make it easier for me.
100, okay.
I have a goal. I want to live to 100.
Nice. Okay.
That's actually a goal in my life.
Nice.
What would I ask him? I would ask him, did you step out into every God opportunity put in front of you? That's what I'd ask him. Yeah. I hope I live that way. I really, really do. I hope I live that way. Mm-hmm. And advice I would give to my younger self. I would say God is so much more present than you think. I think that's a big thing. You probably don't know my whole story, but like in my teenage years, like the only understanding I knew of God was that he was kind of like this bossy guy, just wanted me to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much it. That was the extent of the relationship. Like, you just have to do stuff because you're a Christian. Mm-hmm. I definitely still kept going to church, didn't go off the rails in such a way, but dude, I think that's one of the big things that breaks my heart and motivates me to keep building the church because I don't want teenagers to go through the same thing that I did, which was not knowing how amazing God actually is. Like when I got to like help lead youth ministry in Sydney, I was always so jealous of those kids because they have like these like incredible encounters with God at such a young age. And they got to grow up like going to school knowing that, okay, you're not alone. You got to learn. You got to have like incredible youth leaders around you. Like, yeah, I just got to see some of like the youth boys that I got to be with there, and like just the way that they're like so ahead of me in every single way, like with their character, with their understanding of who God is, even in their own personal talents, like especially the musicians, like they got opportunities they never got before. Yeah, so I wish I could have told my younger self that. I don't know how well I would have taken it, but I wish there was a better church for me growing up. But yeah, that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like, I know exactly what you mean. Like, you watch their experience in the great church they get to grow up in, and like you're like, man, I wish I could have had that. But you know, look where you are today, though.
Dude, that's exactly the thing. Like, that's why I even struggled with that question a little bit. I'm just like, yeah, but those younger years made me who I am today. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But I'm sure I could save myself a lot of heartache. But yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't change it. I think it was a valuable time. If anything, I felt like it's so interesting even now getting to talk to my friends. Like, you have a level of rapport with people who aren't Christians because you kind of like grew up and did the same things that they did, and now you kind of get to go away. Whereas I feel like if I had grown up maybe like super Christian or something like that, maybe I wouldn't have had that level of rapport.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. God knows. I don't know.
No, good answer. It's cool. Awesome. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you had a good time and all that.
Yeah, man, it was great. It was good questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And
I hope it was valuable for whoever's listening.
Oh, I'm sure it was. There's some good stuff in there. I like the homework habits too. I'm like writing this down, you know. Still in college, but yeah, I just want to encourage you before we go that you're a good man, and no matter where God takes you, you'll always be the head, not the tail, and you're a leader who sets the pace. You don't just, follow blindly, and you're an influencer no matter what situation you're in and no matter how it looks like. So yeah, just keep doing your thing.
Appreciate that, man. You too. Keep going with the podcast.
Yeah.
Helping lots of people.
Appreciate it. And you got anything you want to promote? Promote your podcast. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to listen, I run a podcast called Stepping Out Series. I kind of spoke about it within this podcast itself. Yeah, it's all about, just like you said at the start, ordinary people, just like you and me, stepping out into extraordinary things despite the odds. I'm very passionate about seeing you and whoever else is listening to this step out into their God purpose, into their dreams, and just saying bye to all the stuff that tries to hold you back in life. And I hope I get to play like a small part in that. So if you go to youtube.com/Anugreh Sapra, you'll find all of that there. Otherwise, just Spotify my name or Apple Podcast my name. And
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. And for everyone else, and until next time, as we're maturing, we're going to keep learning, stirring up, and chasing after what our Creator created us to do. So have a good one, everyone. Peace.